The city burned. Thessa stood at the window of the underground shelter and watched her world die. Orange flames climbed the towers that her ancestors had built over thousands of years. Black smoke covered the sky. The beautiful gardens where Valari children once played were now filled with enemy soldiers. She was old, even by Valari standards. Her skin, which usually glowed with soft blue light when she was happy, now showed only dark purple patterns of grief. Around her, the last survivors of her people huddled in the cold shelter. There were maybe 2,000 here. Across the planet, perhaps 200,000 Valari remained alive. 4 billion had lived here just 6 months ago. The Korthan Empire had come without warning. They wanted the Valari homeworld for its location, perfect for building a military base. They did not care about the people who lived here. The Valari had no weapons to fight back. They were artists, philosophers, and teachers. War was something they read about in history, not something they knew how to do. Thessa remembered the day they sent their first message to the Galactic Council. She had believed help would come. The Council existed to protect peaceful species, or so she thought. They sent their plea to every member species. 43 different civilizations received their cry for help. 43 species said no. Some said they had trade agreements with the Korthan Empire they could not break. Others said they were too far away to help in time. Many simply said it was not their problem. The Council held a vote. Should they intervene to save the Valari people? The vote failed. 28 said no. 15 said nothing at all. Thessa closed her eyes. She had watched the Council session broadcast. She saw the representatives of great civilizations, species who claimed to value peace and justice, vote to let her people die. One representative, a creature called Counselor Zethra, even argued that intervention would upset the balance of power in the galaxy. Better to let one small species perish than risk a larger war. A young Valari named Calyx approached her. He was an engineer, one of the few who understood the old communication systems. His skin flickered with dim orange light, showing his determination despite the fear. "Elder Thessa," he said quietly, "I want to send one more message. Not to the Council, to anyone who will listen. On every frequency we can reach." Thessa looked at him. What was the point? But then she saw the hope in his eyes. Even now he had not given up completely. "Do it," she said. "We have nothing left to lose." Calyx worked through the night. The shelter had limited power, but he managed to boost their signal using old satellite systems the Korthan had not yet destroyed. He crafted a message, simple and honest. He spoke about his people, about their culture and their peaceful ways. He described how they were being destroyed while the galaxy watched and did nothing. He asked if anyone out there believed that some things were worth fighting for, even when it was not easy or profitable. Then he broadcasted on every channel, every frequency, every possible way a signal could travel through space. Far away, on a planet called Earth, a young officer named Doyen Shin sat at his monitoring station. It was a boring shift deep in the night. His job was to scan for signals from deep space. Earth was new to galactic society. They had only developed faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. Most of the established alien civilizations barely acknowledged humanity's existence. Doyen was half asleep when the computer started beeping. A signal coming from far away. He sat up and started analyzing it. The language was alien, but the translation software worked. As he listened to Calyx's message, his tiredness vanished. He immediately called his captain. Minho Park arrived quickly, still putting on his uniform jacket. Doyen played the message for him. They listened in silence as Calyx described the death of his civilization. "The Galactic Council voted not to help them?" Minho asked, his voice tight with anger. "Yes, sir," Doyen replied. "Every major power said no." Minho was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Get me Admiral Kim. Right now." Admiral Jiho Kim was Earth's most respected military commander. He had fought in the unification wars that brought peace to Earth decades ago. He knew what it meant to stand against tyranny. When Minho contacted him and explained the situation, Admiral Kim did not hesitate. "Send the message to my office. I will listen to it myself," he said. An hour later, Admiral Kim sat in his quarters aboard the orbital command station. He listened to Calyx's message 3 times. Each time his expression grew more serious. He thought about his own past, about the wars he had fought, about the times when doing the right thing had seemed impossible but was still necessary. He called a meeting with his senior staff. Captain Minho Park was there. So was Commander Hyun Choi, his tactical officer. Dr. Suji Lee, the chief xenobiologist, joined them remotely. Admiral Kim played the message for all of them. When it finished, the room was silent. Dr. Lee spoke first. I have been studying the Valari for years. They are peaceful people. They have contributed so much to galactic culture. Their art, their philosophy, their poetry. They never hurt anyone. And now they are being exterminated while everyone just watches. Her voice broke slightly. How can the Council do nothing? Commander Choi frowned. With respect, Admiral, this is not our fight. We barely have enough ships to defend our own system. The Korthan Empire has hundreds of warships. If we interfere, they could come after Earth next. Admiral Kim nodded slowly. You are right, Commander. This is dangerous. It could cost us everything. He paused. But I did not join the military to only fight when it was safe or convenient. I joined because I believed some things are worth fighting for. He looked at each of them. The Valari are dying. They asked for help and everyone said no. Every powerful civilization in the galaxy turned their back. So I ask you this. What kind of species do we want to be? Do we want to be like the others, making excuses while innocent people are slaughtered? Or do we want to be the kind of people who stand up, even when it is hard? Minho Park smiled slightly. I think you already know the answer, sir. Admiral Kim made his decision. Prepare the first fleet. We leave for the Valari homeworld in 48 hours. Toyun, send a response to that signal. Tell them help is coming. Back in the underground shelter on the Valari homeworld, Kalix sat by his communication equipment. He had not expected any response. His message had been a final act of desperation, nothing more. But then, impossibly, the equipment started beeping. A response. Someone had answered. His hands shook as he activated the message. The voice that came through spoke a language the translator identified as from a species called humans, a species Kalix had never heard of before. The message was simple. We heard your call. We are coming to help, hold on. Humanity stands with you. Kalix ran to find Elder Thessa. She was resting, exhausted from grief. He shook her gently awake. Elder, someone answered. A species called humans. They say they are coming. Thessa sat up slowly. In her long life, she had seen many things, but she had never heard of humans. Who were they? Why would they help when no one else would? Are they powerful? She asked. Do they have a great fleet? Kalix checked his databases. What he found made his heart sink. Humans were barely known in galactic society. They had only recently developed space travel. They had no allies, no great military reputation. By galactic standards, they were nobody. No, he admitted. They are a young species, weak compared to the Korthan Empire. Thessa was quiet for a long moment. Then, despite everything, she felt something she had not felt in months. A small spark of warmth appeared in her chest. Her skin glowed faintly with pale blue light. Hope. Then they are either very brave or very foolish, she said quietly. Perhaps both. But they are coming when no one else would. That means something. She stood up, her old bones aching. Tell the others. Help is coming. It may not be enough to save us, but at least we will not die alone. The orbital shipyards above Earth were busy with activity. 20 warships prepared for departure. This was the entire First Fleet, everything humanity could send into deep space. The ships were not large or impressive by galactic standards. Most were converted from cargo vessels or mining ships, but they were all Earth-had. Admiral Jiho Kim stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the final preparations. Captain Minho Park stood beside him. Below them, thousands of crew members checked systems, loaded supplies, and said goodbye to their families. Many of them knew they might not come back. The Council contacted us again, Minho said quietly. Ambassador Kang says they are very angry. They are threatening to isolate Earth completely if we go through with this. Admiral Kim nodded. I expected that. The Council does not like anyone challenging their decisions. We could lose everything, Minho continued. Trade agreements, technology exchanges, our chance to be part of the galactic community. Yes, the Admiral agreed. He was quiet for a moment. But what good is being part of a community that values profit over life? What kind of civilization would we become if we learned to ignore cries for help? Because it was inconvenient. He turned to face his captain. I fought in the unification wars, Minho. I saw what happens when good people do nothing. I will not make that mistake again, Minho smiled. I would not expect anything else, sir. In the medical bay, Dr. Suji Lee was preparing her team. She had studied the Valari people for years, fascinated by their culture. She had learned their language, read their poetry, and understood their philosophy. To her, they were not just an abstract alien species. They were real people with families, dreams, and hopes. Now those people were dying, and she had a chance to help save them. She organized medical supplies, prepared translation equipment, and briefed her staff on Valari biology. If they succeeded in rescuing survivors, they would need to care for them during the long journey back to safety. Lieutenant Doyen Shin had been talking with Calyx every day. The young Valari engineer sent updates on the situation on the ground. Each report was worse than the last. The Corthan forces were methodically destroying everything. They burned libraries, demolished monuments, and hunted down any Valari who tried to resist. But Calyx never gave up hope. He told Doyen about his people, their history, and their culture. He sent images of what the Valari homeworld looked like before the invasion. Beautiful cities that grew like forests, art that seemed alive, gardens where every plant was carefully chosen to create harmony. Doyen found himself becoming friends with Calyx, even though they had never met in person. They talked about their families, their fears, and their hopes. Calyx asked questions about Earth and humanity. He was curious about the species that was coming to help them when no one else would. "Why are you doing this?" Calyx asked during one conversation. "Your people have nothing to gain." Doyen thought about it. "Because it is the right thing to do," he said finally. "Because if we become the kind of people who ignore suffering when we can help, then we lose something important. We lose what makes us human." In the tactical center, Commander Hyun Choi was not optimistic. He ran simulation after simulation, trying to find a way to win against the Corthan forces. Every scenario ended badly. The Corthan Empire had 5 times as many ships. Their weapons were more powerful. Their shields were stronger. In a straight fight, humanity had no chance. But Commander Choi had not become head of tactical operations by giving up easily. If they could not win through strength, they would need to win through strategy. He studied the Valari system, looking for advantages. There was an asteroid field that could provide cover, planetary rings that could hide ships, orbital debris from destroyed defense stations that could be used tactically. He developed a plan that relied on speed, surprise, and confusion. It was risky and required perfect timing, but it was the only plan that gave them any chance at all. Ambassador Minji Kang stood before the Galactic Council. She had been Earth's representative for 5 years. She had worked hard to build relationships with other species, to prove that humanity deserved a place in galactic society. Now she had to defend a decision that could undo all of that work. Councillor Zethra led the opposition. The Axian representative was tall and elegant, with silver skin that shimmered under the lights. When Zethra spoke, it was with practiced political smoothness. "Ambassador Kang, your species is making a grave mistake. The Corthan Empire is powerful. By interfering, you risk starting a war that could spread across the galaxy. We cannot allow that." Minji stood tall. "With respect, Counselor, a war is already happening. The Valari are being exterminated. That you choose not to acknowledge it does not make it less real." Zethra's expression hardened. "The Council has voted. The matter is closed. If humanity proceeds, you will face consequences. Trade sanctions. Technology embargoes. Complete isolation from galactic society. Is that what you want for your young species?" Minji looked around the council chamber. She saw representatives from dozens of species all watching. Some looked uncomfortable. Others showed no emotion at all. All of them were content to let the Valari die. "My government has made its decision," she said clearly. "We will not turn our back on people who need help regardless of the cost. If that means we stand alone, then we stand alone." She turned and walked out of the chamber. Behind her, Zethra called for a formal vote of censure against Earth. It passed easily. The first fleet departed 3 days later. 20 ships left Earth orbit and jumped to faster-than-light speed. The journey to the Valari homeworld would take 2 weeks. 2 weeks to prepare. 2 weeks to train. 2 weeks for the crew to understand what they were flying into. Admiral Kim addressed the entire fleet over the communication system. His words were broadcast to every ship, every crew member. "I know you are scared," he said. "I would be worried if you were not. We are going to fight against an enemy that outnumbers us. We have been told that we will fail, that we are throwing away our lives for nothing." He paused. "But I want you to remember something. The Valari sent out a call for help. 43 species heard that call. 43 said no. Every powerful civilization in the galaxy turned away. They had their reasons. Political reasons, economic reasons, strategic reasons. But reasons do not save lives. Actions do. And we chose to act. Not because it is easy, not because it benefits us, but because it is right. Because we believe that some things matter more than politics or profit. Because we refuse to be the kind of people who do nothing while others suffer. His voice grew stronger. The galaxy will remember what we do, whether we succeed or fail. They will remember that when everyone else said no, humanity said yes. They will remember that we stood for something. And maybe, just maybe, that will inspire others to do the same. Throughout the fleet, crew members listened. Some cried. Others felt fear turn into determination. All of them understood that they were part of something bigger than themselves. Finally, after 2 weeks of travel, the fleet arrived at the outer edge of the Valari system. What they saw made even experienced officers feel sick. The system was filled with debris, shattered orbital stations, destroyed defense platforms, the remains of Valari ships that had tried to fight back. Bodies floated in the void, frozen in the moment of their death. This was not war. This was extermination. Admiral Kim ordered the fleet to proceed carefully. They detected Korthan patrol ships but avoided contact. Their goal was not to fight yet. First, they needed to reach the planet and make contact with the survivors. Captain Minho Park volunteered to lead the first contact team. He took a small shuttle with just 5 people: himself, Dr. Suji Lee, Lieutenant Doyun Shin, and 2 security officers. They descended through the atmosphere, passing over burning cities and scarred landscapes. Calyx guided them to the underground shelter using coded signals. When the shuttle landed in a hidden valley, they saw Valari guards waiting. The guards were armed with old weapons clearly not designed for combat. They looked exhausted and afraid. One of them, a female warrior named Vera, stepped forward. Her skin showed red patterns of anger mixed with gray patterns of grief. "You are the humans?" she asked in heavily accented Galactic Common. "We are," Captain Park replied. "We came as fast as we could." Vera studied them for a long moment. Then she lowered her weapon. "Follow me. Elder Thessa wants to meet you." They walked through tunnels carved into the rock. The walls were decorated with Valari art, beautiful murals showing what their world once looked like. Now those images were a painful reminder of everything they had lost. The shelter was crowded with survivors. Children clung to their parents. The elderly sat quietly, too tired to move. Everyone looked hungry and scared. When they saw the humans, some stared in confusion. Others showed the first signs of hope. Elder Thessa waited in the central chamber. She was ancient, her skin wrinkled and her body bent with age, but her eyes were sharp and clear. When Captain Park and his team entered, she stood slowly. For a moment, no one spoke. Thessa looked at these strange aliens who had come from across the stars. These humans who had risked everything to answer their call. Then tears began to fall down her face. Her skin glowed with soft blue light the first time in many months. "You came," she whispered. "You really came." 2 days passed in a blur of desperate activity. Human engineers worked alongside Calyx and his team, trying to repair what they could of the Valari defense systems. Most had been destroyed, but Calyx knew the old systems better than anyone. He found backups, hidden secondary networks, things the Korthan had missed. Commander Hyun Choi coordinated with Vira, learning everything about Korthan tactics. The Valari warrior had fought them for months. She knew how they moved, how they thought. That knowledge was precious. "They are arrogant," Vira explained. "They believe their strength makes them invincible. They charge straight ahead using overwhelming force. They do not expect resistance." Choi nodded, his mind already working. Arrogance could be used against them. Dr. Suji Lee organized the evacuation. Thousands of Valari civilians were brought aboard the human ships. Families clutched their few remaining possessions. Parents carried sleeping children. The elderly needed help walking. Each person represented a life saved, a piece of Valari culture preserved. But there were too many and not enough ships. They could only take about half the survivors. The rest would have to stay in the shelters and hope they survived what was coming. Lieutenant Doyun Shin spent every spare moment talking with Calyx. The Valari engineer was exhausted, but refused to rest. He worked without stopping, driven by the need to do something, anything to help his people. "If we die tomorrow," Calyx said quietly one night, "I want you to know something. What your people have done coming here, risking everything. We will never forget it. Even if we all die, the memory will live on somehow. Doyen put his hand on Calix's shoulder. We are not going to die. We are going to fight, and we are going to win. He said it with more confidence than he felt. On the morning of the second day, the Korthan fleet arrived. They emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the system. 107 warships, each larger and more powerful than anything humanity had. They moved in perfect formation, an iron wall advancing through space. Admiral Jiho Kim watched them approach on his display. He had known it would be bad, but seeing them in person was different. His 20 ships looked like toys compared to this armada. A message came through. The face that appeared on the screen was reptilian with dark scales and cold eyes. High Commander Dravik of the Korthan Empire. Humans, Dravik said, his voice dripping with contempt. I do not know your species. You are not important enough to know. But you have made a foolish mistake. You have interfered in Korthan business. Leave now and I will let you live. Stay, and I will destroy every one of your ships. Admiral Kim took a deep breath. This was the moment. He activated the communication system, broadcasting his response on all frequencies. Every ship in the system would hear this. More than that, he knew someone would be recording. The galaxy would hear his words. High Commander Dravik, I am Admiral Jiho Kim of Earth. You ask why we are here. We are here because the Valari people called for help. They are innocent and peaceful. They have done nothing to deserve destruction. Yet you attacked them anyway, he paused. The Galactic Council voted to do nothing. 43 species turned their backs. They had their reasons, I am sure. Good political reasons, safe reasons. But we decided that some things matter more than safety. Some things matter more than politics, so no, we will not leave. We will stand with the Valari. If that means we must fight you, then we fight. If that means we die here, then we die. But we will not abandon people who need our help. That is not who we are, Dravik laughed. Noble words. They will not save you. You have 20 ships against my 100. This is not courage. This is suicide. Perhaps Admiral Kim said quietly. But better to die standing than to live on our knees. He cut the transmission. Throughout his fleet, crews went to battle stations. On the planet below, Valari survivors watched on whatever screens they could find. Elder Thessa stood in the shelter surrounded by her people, watching as the small human fleet moved to intercept the massive Korthan armada. The battle began. The Korthan fleet charged forward, exactly as Vyra had predicted. They came in a straight line, weapons blazing. The first volley was devastating. One human ship exploded immediately. Another took critical damage and had to fall back. But Commander Choi's plan was not to fight them head-on. The human ship scattered, diving into the asteroid field. The Korthan followed, confident in their superior numbers. In the asteroid field, things changed. The human ships were smaller and more agile. They darted between rocks, using them as cover. They fired and retreated before the Korthan could respond. It was like fighting shadows. Captain Minho Park commanded the Indomitable, the flagship. His ship took hit after hit, but he kept fighting. He led a squadron through a narrow passage between two large asteroids. 3 Korthan ships followed. The passage was too narrow for them. They collided with each other, their shields failing. Park's weapons finished them. Lieutenant Doyen Shin coordinated fleet communications while managing the evacuation ships. He had to keep track of 20 warships, 10 transport ships, and dozens of smaller craft. One wrong order and ships would crash into each other. His mind worked faster than it ever had before. On the planet, Calix watched his equipment. Then he saw something impossible. One of the old orbital defense platforms thought destroyed was still functional. He had repaired it in secret, saving it for this moment. He activated it. The ancient weapon came online, its systems awakening after months of silence. It targeted a Korthan cruiser and fired. The beam cut through the ship's shields like they were not there. The cruiser exploded. The Korthan fleet was confused. They had not expected any planetary defenses. They had not expected the humans to fight so cleverly. Their formation began to break down as ships tried to avoid both human attacks and the orbital platform. But the Korthans still had overwhelming numbers. Slowly, they began to adapt. They spread out, surrounding the human ships. One by one, human vessels fell. The destroyer Phoenix went down, fighting 5 Korthan ships at once. The cruiser Thunder took a direct hit to its reactor and vanished in a ball of fire. Admiral Kim watched his fleet shrink. They had started with 20 ships. Now they were down to 14, 12, 10. Each loss hurt, but he could not stop. He could not retreat. Too many Valari civilians were still being evacuated. If the fleet ran now, those people would die. Captain Minho Park saw a Korthan battleship moving toward a transport full of Valari children. The transport had no weapons, no shields. It was helpless. The battleship was charging its main weapon. Park made his decision in an instant. All crew abandon ship, he ordered. Get to the escape pods now. His crew stared at him. Sir, what are you doing? Saving those children. Go, that is an order. The crew evacuated. Park stayed at the helm alone. He aimed the Indomitable directly at the Korthan battleship and pushed the engines to maximum. The ship accelerated faster and faster. Admiral Kim saw what Park was doing. No. Park smiled. Tell them I did not die afraid, sir. Tell them I died protecting children. The Indomitable crashed into the Korthan battleship at full speed. Both ships exploded. The transport, saved by Park's sacrifice, escaped to safety. The battle raged for hours. Human ships fought with everything they had. When weapons failed, they rammed enemy vessels. When shields fell, they kept fighting anyway. The Korthan had never faced an enemy so determined. High Commander Dravik watched from his command ship. He was confused and angry. These humans should have run away. They should have surrendered. Instead, they fought like they had already accepted death. Ship after ship fell, and still they did not stop. On the planet, Valari survivors watched in awe and tears. They saw humans dying to protect them. These strangers, these people they had never met before, were giving their lives freely. Elder Thessa wept, her skin glowing with colors that mixed grief and gratitude. The human fleet was down to 7 ships. They had lost more than half their number. Ammunition was running low. Shields were failing. It seemed like the end was coming. Then something happened that no one expected. New hyperspace signatures appeared at the edge of the system. Not Korthan signatures, something else. Many ships coming from different directions. Admiral Kim stared at his sensors. What is that? Ships began emerging from hyperspace. First a few, then dozens, then hundreds. They came from every direction. Kim recognized some of the designs. Axion cruisers, Torvin destroyers, Helix carriers, species from across the galaxy. A message came through. It was from an Axion captain. Human fleet, this is Captain Toresh of the Axion Defense Force. We are here to assist. Our government may have voted against intervention, but we could not watch you die alone. Many of us feel the same. We are sorry we took so long. More messages poured in. Ship captains from a dozen different species all saying similar things. They had watched the battle. They had seen humanity stand. They had seen people willing to die for strangers. And they could not stay away. Some came without their government's permission. Others convinced their leaders that this was right. All of them came because humanity had shown them something they had forgotten, that courage could be contagious. The Korthan fleet found itself suddenly outnumbered. High Commander Dravik stared at his screens in disbelief. Where there had been only 20 human ships, there were now over 200 vessels from dozens of species. The days after the battle were strange. The surviving human ships floated in orbit above Valara Prime, surrounded by vessels from dozens of different species. No one quite knew what to do next. The rules had changed, but no one had written new ones yet. Admiral Jiho Kim sat in the medical bay, his left arm in a cast from where debris had struck him during the final moments of battle. Dr. Suji. Lee was checking his injuries when the communication system activated. It was a message from the Galactic Council. Counselor Zethra's face appeared on the screen, and for once the smooth politician looked uncomfortable. Admiral Kim, Zethra began slowly, the Council wishes to speak with you. And there are many questions about what happened here. Kim stared at the counselor. With respect, Counselor Zethra, my people are mourning their dead. We can talk politics later. He ended the transmission. Dr. Lee smiled slightly. That was very satisfying to watch. Below on the planet, the work of caring for the Valari survivors continued. The underground shelters were crowded and lacking supplies. Ships from the Allied fleet began sending down food, medical equipment, and temporary housing structures. Elder Thessa insisted on personally thanking every human she met. She walked through the temporary camps, her old body moving slowly, speaking to the soldiers and medical workers. Her skin glowed with soft blue gratitude. She touched each person's hand and said the same thing in her accented galactic common. "Thank you for standing with us." Many of the humans found themselves crying when she spoke to them. They had not expected this, the depth of gratitude from people they barely knew. Lieutenant Doyun Shin, now promoted to captain, spent most of his time coordinating with Calyx. Together, they worked on planning the reconstruction. The Valari engineer knew what his world needed. Shin knew how to organize resources from the various allied ships. One evening, Calyx took Shin to see the ruins of the capital city. They walked through streets that had once been beautiful, now blackened and broken. Calyx showed him a building that had been the central library. 4,000 years of our history was in there, Calyx said quietly. All the books, all the art, all the records of who we were. Gone. Shin put his hand on his friend's shoulder. But you are still here. Your people are still here. You can rebuild. You can remember. Calyx nodded slowly. His skin flickered with orange light, determination mixing with grief. Yes. We will rebuild, and we will never forget who stood with us. The memorial service for the fallen humans was held 1 week after the battle. It took place on the planet's surface in a valley that had somehow escaped damage. Thousands gathered, human survivors, Valari civilians, and representatives from all the species who had joined the fight. Elder Thessa insisted on speaking. She stood before the crowd, her voice amplified so everyone could hear. She spoke for over an hour, saying the name of each human who had died. After each name, she told a small story about what that person had done, how they had helped, what they had given. She spoke of Captain Minho Park last. She described how he had sacrificed himself to save Valari children he had never met. Her voice broke as she spoke, but she continued. Your Captain Park will be remembered by my people forever, she said, looking directly at Admiral Kim. We will teach our children about him. His name will be part of our history. He will live as long as the Valari remember. The ceremony was broadcast across the galaxy. Billions watched as Elder Thessa honored the fallen. The recording of her speech spread through every communication network. People who had never heard of humans before learned about what they had done. On Earth, the mood was complicated, pride mixed with grief. Parades were held for the returning heroes, but also funerals for those who would never come home. The families of the fallen received honors, but honors could not replace the people they had lost. Ambassador Minji Kang returned to the Galactic Council chambers. She expected hostility. What she found instead was chaos. The council was divided. Some members, led by Counselor Zethra, still argued that humanity had acted recklessly. They said the intervention violated established protocols, that it set a dangerous precedent, that it could lead to more conflicts, but others disagreed loudly. Representatives from smaller species spoke up, often for the first time in years. They pointed out that the Valari had been abandoned by the Council's rules. That protocol had meant letting an entire civilization die. Public opinion across the galaxy had turned dramatically. Citizens of various species watched the recordings of the battle. They saw humans fighting against impossible odds. They saw other species joining them. They saw courage in action, and they asked their governments why they had done nothing. Trade sanctions against Earth never materialized. Too many companies wanted to do business with the species that had captured the galaxy's imagination. Technology embargoes were quietly dropped. Politicians who had voted against intervention found themselves facing angry constituents. A new movement began forming. It started small with just a few species. They called themselves the Alliance of Free Worlds. Their principle was simple. Member species would commit to defending each other against aggression, regardless of politics or profit. Humanity and the Valari were the founding members. Within a month, 12 other species had joined. Within 3 months, 30 Counselor Zethra tried to stop it. The counselor argued that this alliance was divisive, that it undermined the Council's authority. But for once, the smooth words did not work. Too many species were tired of a system that prioritized stability over justice. Commander Hyun Choi worked with Vera to establish joint military training. Valari warriors learned human tactics. Human soldiers learned Valari strategy. Other species began sending observers, then participants. What emerged was something new, a military force built not on conquest, but on mutual protection. Different species learning to fight together, combining their strengths. Dr. Suji Lee stayed on Valara Prime for months. She helped establish cultural exchange programs. Valari refugees who had been taken aboard human ships began teaching humans about their art, their music, their philosophy. In return, humans shared their own culture. The first joint human Valari school opened in a temporary building. Children of both species learned together. At first it was awkward. The species were so different. But children adapt quickly. Soon they were playing games together, teaching each other their languages, becoming friends. Dr. Lee watched a Valari child and a human child working together on a drawing. The human child was maybe 6 years old. The Valari child was younger. They did not speak each other's language well yet. But they communicated through gestures and laughter, creating art together. This, Dr. Lee thought, is what we fought for. Not just survival, but the chance for different peoples to know each other, to care about each other. 6 months after the battle, reconstruction was well underway. New buildings rose where old ones had fallen. They were different from the traditional Valari architecture, incorporating designs and materials from various allied species. The new Valara Prime would be a testament to cooperation. Calyx led the effort to build a monument in the center of the rebuilt capital. It was a massive sculpture showing 2 hands reaching toward each other. One was clearly human. The other was Valari. They did not grasp but met as equals, fingers touching gently. Inscribed on the base in dozens of languages were the names of everyone who had died in both battles. Humans, Valari, and members of other species who had joined the fight. Below the names was a simple phrase in Galactic Common: "They stood together." Admiral Kim attended the unveiling ceremony. He was retiring from military service, though he would continue to advise the Alliance. His hair had gone completely gray in the past 6 months. The stress and grief had aged him. But when he saw the monument, when he read the names of his people carved into the stone, he felt something that had been absent for months. Not happiness exactly, but a sense that their sacrifice had meaning. Elder Thessa stood beside him. She was even older now, her body failing, but her mind remained sharp. "Admiral," she said quietly, "I do not have much time left, but I want you to know something. When I die, I will die knowing that my people live, that our culture survives, that we have friends in this galaxy. You gave us that. Your people gave us that." Kim took her hand gently. "We gave each other that. Your people's courage inspired us as much as we inspired others. You never gave up hope even when you had every reason to." They stood together in silence, 2 leaders who had seen their peoples through the worst and brought them to something better. But not everyone was happy about the changes. In the shadows, forces were gathering. The Korthan Empire had not forgotten their defeat. High Commander Dravik had survived, though he had been removed from his position in disgrace. He spent his days planning revenge, and he was not alone. Other empires, other powers that relied on intimidation and force, watched the growing alliance with concern. If smaller species united, if they learned to defend themselves, what would happen to the old order? Meetings were held in secret. Agreements were made in the dark. A counter-alliance formed, bringing together those who saw the new movement as a threat to their power. Intelligence reports began reaching Alliance Command. Commander Choi brought them to Admiral Kim, even though he was officially retired. The attack came sooner than anyone expected. 6 weeks after the intelligence reports, the enemy alliance struck at multiple Alliance worlds simultaneously. It was coordinated, brutal, and designed to break the young coalition before it could fully organize. Admiral Jiho Kim was pulled out of retirement. The Alliance needed his experience, his strategic mind. He accepted without hesitation, though his body protested the long hours and stress. Dr. Suji Lee worried about him, but she understood. Some things were more important than rest. The Alliance fleet assembled faster than anyone thought possible. Ships from 37 species all coming together. But organizing them was chaos. Different communication protocols, different battle doctrines, different ideas about command structure. Admiral Kim spent days in meetings with captains from various species. Some were hostile, unused to taking orders from anyone, let alone a human. Others were eager but inexperienced in large-scale coordination. All of them needed to learn to work together, and they needed to learn fast. Captain Doyen Shin commanded a carrier group that included human, Valari, and 3 other species ships. His first planning session was a disaster. The different species could barely understand each other's tactical language. Formations that seemed obvious to one species made no sense to another. Calyx, who had become a liaison officer, watched the chaos and laughed. Shin looked at him in confusion. "My friend," Calyx said, "do you remember when your people first came to help mine? We could barely communicate. We had different ways of doing everything. But we learned. We adapted. These captains will do the same." He was right. Slowly, through practice and patience, the fleet began to function as a unit. Human tactics of flexibility, combined with Volari defensive strategies. Other species added their own strengths. What emerged was something unique, a military force that used diversity as a weapon rather than a weakness. Commander Hyun Choi led a deep strike mission into enemy territory. His team included soldiers from 5 different species, including Vera and her Volari warriors. Their target was a supply depot deep in Korthan space. The operation was supposed to be quiet, but they were discovered. What followed was a desperate running battle through enemy installations. Choi's team fought with everything they had, each species covering for the other's weaknesses. Vira saved Choi's life twice. Her knowledge of Korthan tactics let them avoid ambushes. In return, Choi's human soldiers provided covering fire when her warriors were pinned down. They escaped with critical intelligence and only minor casualties. When they returned, Choi and Vira embraced like old friends. The stern human commander and the fierce Volari warrior had developed a deep respect for each other. The intelligence they brought back was valuable, but troubling. The enemy alliance was larger than expected. The Korthan Empire had convinced 6 other major powers to join them. Together they had assembled a fleet of over 500 warships, and their target was clear: Earth. High Commander Dravik had convinced the other empires that humanity was the key. Destroy Earth, he argued, and the alliance would collapse. The humans were the symbol, the inspiration. Without them, the smaller species would lose courage and surrender. When the Alliance Council learned of this plan, there was immediate debate. Some argued that Earth should be evacuated. Others suggested that the Alliance fleet should spread out to defend all member worlds rather than concentrating on one. Elder Thessa attended the council meeting despite her failing health. She stood slowly, her skin flickering with dim light, and spoke. "When my people faced extinction, humanity came to help us. They came when no one else would. They risked everything. Now their world faces the same threat. How can we do less for them than they did for us?" Her voice was weak but clear. "If we abandon Earth, we abandon what this alliance stands for. We become like the old Galactic Council, making decisions based on fear rather than principle." The vote was unanimous. The Alliance fleet would go to Earth. Ambassador Minji Kang returned to Earth to help coordinate defenses. The human homeworld was busy with preparation. Orbital weapons were activated. Civilian populations were moved to shelters. Every available ship was called back to Sol system. But more importantly, ships from dozens of other species were arriving. Axion cruisers, Torvin destroyers, Volari defensive platforms. Species that Earth had never even met before came because they were part of the Alliance. Because they believed in what humanity had started. People on Earth watched the sky fill with alien ships. Many were afraid. These were strange beings from unknown worlds. But others remembered the stories from Valara Prime. These were friends coming to help, just as humanity had helped others. Admiral Kim stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the Allied fleet assemble. Over 400 ships representing 37 different species. It was the largest multi-species fleet in recorded history. Captain Shin approached him. "Sir, we are receiving a message from the Korthan fleet. They are demanding we surrender Earth immediately." Kim smiled grimly. "Put it through." Dravik's face appeared on the screen. The disgraced commander looked older, his scales darker. But his eyes burned with hate. "Admiral Kim," Dravik said, "you embarrassed me once. You turned the galaxy against the natural order. Now I will destroy your homeworld and prove that your ideals are worthless." Kim looked at him calmly. "High Commander, you still do not understand. This is not about humans anymore. This is about every species that is tired of being bullied, every civilization that wants to live free from fear. You are not facing one species. You are facing an idea, and you cannot kill an idea with weapons." Dravik laughed. "Ideas do not stop missiles. Principles do not deflect energy weapons. I have 500 ships. You may have gathered a fleet, but they are a mixture of weaklings and cowards. They will break when real warriors attack. Then come and try, Kim said quietly. We will be waiting. The battle for Earth began at dawn, Earth time. The enemy fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Sol System. 500 warships moving in perfect formation. It was a terrifying sight, but they were met by the Allied fleet. 400 ships from dozens of species, arrayed in defensive positions throughout the system. This time humanity was not alone. The battle was massive. Ships engaged across millions of kilometers of space. Admiral Kim coordinated the defense using the same tactics that had worked at Valara Prime, but on a much larger scale. Captain Shin's carrier group hit the enemy flank. His mixed species force moved with practiced coordination. Human fighters provided speed and maneuverability. Valari bombers delivered heavy firepower. Other species filled in gaps, each doing what they did best. Calyx, aboard one of the Valari ships, coordinated electronic warfare. He and his team disrupted enemy communications, making it harder for Dravik to command his forces. The Korthan had numerical advantage, but the Alliance had better coordination. The battle raged for hours. Ships on both sides fell, space filled with debris and escape pods, but the Allied fleet held. They fought with determination born from shared purpose. Each species protected the others, just as humanity had protected the Valari. Commander Choi led a strike force directly at Dravik's command ship. It was risky, almost suicidal, but they broke through the defensive perimeter. Multiple ships pounded the massive vessel with everything they had. Dravik watched his ship systems fail one by one. He had been so certain of victory. His fleet was larger. His weapons were powerful. But he had underestimated what people fighting for each other could accomplish. Admiral Kim received a message. Dravik wanted to speak with him privately. Kim transported over to the damaged command ship with a security team. They found Dravik in his ruined bridge, surrounded by dead crew members. The Korthan commander was wounded but still alive. I do not understand, Dravik said, his voice weak. We are stronger. We should have won. Why did they fight so hard for you? Kim looked at him with something close to pity. Because we fought for them first. Because we showed them that someone would stand with them when they needed help. You built your power on fear. We built ours on trust. And trust is stronger. Dravik closed his eyes. I lived my whole life believing strength was everything. That the strong should rule and the weak should submit. You have shown the galaxy something different. I hate you for it. But I also understand now that my way was wrong. He died moments later. Kim stood there for a long moment, thinking about paths chosen and consequences that rippled across the galaxy. With Dravik dead and his command ship crippled, the enemy fleet broke. Some ships surrendered. Others fled. The battle was over. Earth had survived. The Alliance had won. 3 months later, a formal treaty was signed. The new Galactic Alliance was officially recognized, even by the old Galactic Council. The treaty established principles of mutual defense and intervention against aggression. The signing ceremony took place on Valara Prime, in front of the monument to the fallen. Elder Thessa and Admiral Kim signed together, their hands shaking but steady. Elder Thessa died 2 weeks after the signing. She passed peacefully, surrounded by her people. Her last words were about hope and gratitude. The galaxy mourned her passing, but also celebrated what she had lived to see. Her people saved, her world rebuilt, and a new era beginning. Captain Doyun Shin and Calyx established the Joint Defense Academy,